Okay, so today we're going to talk about scatter plots, some regular plotting. We're going to demonstrate spacing and its effects on graphing and how those graphs look. We're going to talk a little bit about range notation versus lens space notation. We're going to do some plotting, some multiple sets of data. We're going to show how these figures are used. And then we're going to plot some multiple sets of data onto one graph. And then we're going to talk about how we can make our graphs look a little bit better and more professional, including like some XY labels, the legend, title, your XY limits, and adding a grid. So in this first part, we can use like here, x equals 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are going to be our x values, and y equals 0, 1, 2, 4, 8. Those are going to be our y values. So we can use scatter of x comma y or plot of x comma y, and those are going to show our different plot types. So the scatter is going to be like the scatter plot, while plot just shows the line in between each of the different values. So we can run this script, and this shows the regular plotted value and the scatter plot values with the individual points throughout this. So in the second part, we can demonstrate how this the spacing in between affects how our graphs look. So we have different values here. So the x1 from 0 to 10, so that has an implicit 1 in between the 0 and the 10.
Okay.
The colon here shows that it goes from 0 to 10. And if you have, this is your start value, and this third value here is your end value. And this middle value shows how much you're incrementing it by. So in x2 here, it would be 0, 0.5, 1, 1.5, and so on up to 10. Whereas x3 right here, this shows you where it would be a much smaller increment. So we're going to plot this, and we'll show how incrementing can have a huge impact on how your graphs look.
Okay.
So here we have, this is sine of 4x. And we can see that this has a pretty good resolution.
Yeah.
However, as we get smaller or larger and larger increments, we can see that the points start to degrade, and it gets especially worse.
Yeah.
And this is what it looks like when you have a value of 1 for the increment. And this is what the different increment values, how they shape up. So going forward, how would you make a very high resolution graph?
You'd want that third number in the lens space to be pretty large, so I'd say, I don't know, 30.
Sure. So we can try that with 30, and we can run this. And we can see that we have a pretty good graph. However, we can also see that, again, once you get towards the peaks, that it starts to get a little bumpy. So if we wanted to increase that, how would you do it?
You could go crazy, go up to 1,000.
Sure. Cool.
Yeah.
And so as a review, we have, for your range notation, you have your start, your step size, and then your end separated by colons. For your lens space, you have your start, your end, and how many numbers in between the linear spacing. So here we can see that if we plotted, we'd get all of our values here, because this is the plot of x, y1, x, y2, x, y3. However, we didn't get to see if we comment this out, we'd see that we only had x and y3 that were plotted from here.
Mm-hmm.
However, we didn't get the plot of x, y1, and x, y2. So a good way to do this is to use the hold on feature. And this should have the same look as xy1, xy2, xy3 plot that we saw from the beginning. And we see that it does look the same.
Okay.
And finally, we want to make our graphs look good and professional, because your graphs can be super misleading and not convey the message that you want. So here's a graph that I started.
Mm-hmm.
But if we wanted to add labels, you can use the X label feature, which has X label, and then in single parenthesis you have the text that you'd like. So we can use that here. And then similarly, Y label will show the text that you'd like on the Y-axis.
Mm-hmm.
So we can see as the number of days in quarantine, my sanity has gone down. If you'd like to add a grid, you can simply type in grid.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to zoom in on a certain part of the graph, you can use the X limit or the Y limit.
Mm-hmm.
So the X limit shows the first number is your lower bound and the second number is your upper bound. You have to remember to use xlim in parentheses, but your two numbers have to be in brackets.
Okay.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So our bounds here have been altered. And then lastly, you can make a title. The title is similar to your Y label, where it has to be in the single quote parentheses. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Alex, and this is Lauren.